Welcome to African Folktales by Big Mark. Your story home. Let the story begin. The first sound was faint. A drumbeat, no louder than a heartbeat, echoing through the night wind like the whisper of a buried memory. Oba sat upright in his cot, heart pounding. He had dreamt of the forest again, the twisted trees, the moss-covered stones, and the drum. Always the drum. It wasn't the first time. But tonight felt different. He stood, pushing aside the tattered raffia curtain of his small hut. The village of Endemu lay under a blanket of darkness, silent except for the occasional creak of wooden beams and the wind brushing over the mud-brick rooftops. The moon hung full and low, heavy with secrets. Oba stepped barefoot onto the cool dirt and listened. Boom! Once more. The beat came from the forest of Waja, a place where children were forbidden to go, where the air always seemed too still, too cold. It was said the trees there remembered things the living wanted to forget. And in the heart of that forest stood the shrine of Waja, where the old drum was sealed. No one spoke of it anymore. Not openly. The elders would silence any mention with a look sharp enough to cut stone. But Oba had heard the stories, passed from mouth to mouth like forbidden fruit. The drum of Waja was cursed, they said. It did not sing, it summoned. Oba was 17. Too curious for his own good, and too stubborn to listen to silence. He crept past the sleeping huts, past the lazy snore of Elder Juma, his uncle, who slept with a calabash of palm wine beside him. Past the fire pit, where embers glowed like the eyes of watching spirits. And out of the village. The path to the forest was narrow, half swallowed by weeds. But Oba walked it as though drawn by a thread wrapped around his ribs. He passed the old well where no one fetched water anymore, past the fallen spirit pole covered in vines, until the first trees rose before him like giants bowing in sleep. The forest of Waja greeted him not with wind, but stillness. Every branch held its breath. Oba pressed forward. The moonlight barely touched the ground. Only thin fingers of light reached between the leaves, dancing like spirits just out of sight. The air was thick, but not with heat, with something older. Something watching. And then he saw it. The shrine. It was smaller than he imagined. A crumbling mud-brick structure, its roof half collapsed, the door broken at the hinges. But still it pulsed with a presence, as if time dared not touch it. Inside, wrapped in faded red cloth, sat the drum. It was beautiful, carved from dark wood, with rings of bone along its edge. Symbols were etched into its skin, spirals, eyes, suns, and something like a hand reaching from below. Oba reached for it. His fingers trembled. Somewhere deep inside, he knew this was wrong. Every tale whispered at the fire, every warning from the elders screamed for him to stop. But his hand didn't listen. He touched it, and the drum answered. Boom. The sound didn't echo. It sank. Into the earth. Into his bones. Into the sky. Oba stumbled back, gasping. All around, the forest remained silent. But something had changed. He turned and ran. Back in Endemu, the village stirred. Torches were lit. Dogs barked. And a woman's scream pierced the air. Oba reached the edge of the village just as a crowd gathered near the square. His uncle, Elder Juma, limped forward, holding his carved cane and scowling. What is it? He barked. Who screamed? It was Ayo's mother, someone whispered. She said, she saw a man. Tall. Dressed like a warrior. But his feet were not touching the ground. Oba's blood ran cold. Another voice added, he disappeared into smoke. Right in front of her eyes. The crowd murmured. Juma raised a hand. Enough. Everyone inside. Now. But Oba didn't move. He looked to the forest. And in the shadows near the edge, something watched him. A figure. Tall. Ash on his face. Eyes glowing faint white. Then, gone. The next morning, Oba tried to forget. But the village wouldn't let him. The elders were tense. Chickens refused to lay eggs. The goats bleated all night. One of the totems near the shrine had cracked clean in half. Oba sat by the riverbank with Ayo, who munched on roasted yam with far less concern. You always thinking too much, Ayo said. Maybe it was just a drunk man with chalk on his face. Floating. Oba snapped. Vanishing into smoke. Ayo shrugged. Maybe he used leaf magic. Or he was one of the spirits. You know they come out sometimes. Especially if someone. He stopped. Oba stared at him. Say it. Especially if someone beat the drum. Silence. Ao dropped the yam. You didn't, did you? Oba didn't answer. Ao's eyes widened. Oba, no. No no no. You know the stories. That drum is older than curses. The last time it played, the village nearly burned. Oba stood. Something's happening. I need to understand it. You need to stay alive. But Oba was already walking away. That night, he returned to the shrine. He didn't touch the drum again. Not yet. He sat before it, stared at it. Studied the carvings. He noticed something new, a crack near the base. Thin, fresh, as if something inside had stirred. Why did you call them? He whispered. The drum did not answer. But the wind shifted. Cold swept through the shrine, and in the doorway, a figure appeared. Not a warrior. A woman, elderly, regal. Her silver hair braided into thick rows, her dress made of flowing red and gold kente cloth. She leaned on a staff wrapped with cowrie shells. Mama Ikiri. You shouldn't be here, boy, she said. Oba bowed his head. I had to come. She looked at the drum. Her face darkened. It's awake, she said softly. Oba looked up. What is it? Mama Ikiri stepped inside. It is not just a drum. It is a vessel. The spirits of the old warriors, those who died forgotten, unburied, dishonored, they speak through it. I saw one, Oba whispered. She nodded. And more will come. Why? Because you called them. The village of Endamu woke under a heavy sky, swollen with thick gray clouds that seemed ready to weep. A low wind rattled through the trees, carrying a scent of damp earth and something older, something that made the hair on Oba's neck stand up. He walked slowly toward the village square, where the crowd was gathering again, their voices low and urgent like a simmering fire. Mama Ikiri stood near the fire pit, her sharp eyes scanning the crowd. Her red and gold kente cloth shimmered, even under the dull sky, and her staff was planted firmly at her side like an anchor. Oba spotted her immediately and made his way through the group. Beside her was Elder Juma, leaning on his cane, his face set in a deep frown. Oba, Mama Ikiri called softly, her voice carrying both warning and welcome. You've awakened something ancient. Now you must understand the cost. Oba swallowed hard. What do I do? How do I stop it? Mama Ikiri's eyes flicked toward the forest's edge, where twisted branches clawed at the sky. The drum listens to blood, she said. It calls not just the dead, but those bound by bloodlines like yours. You are a descendant of the drum's last keeper, a guardian who sealed the spirits long ago. The balance is broken, and the ancestors demand justice. Oba's heart thundered. Justice for what? They died forgotten, betrayed by their own. They seek to reclaim their honor and warn the living. Can I send them back? Mama Ikiri's face grew grave. Only if you prove yourself worthy. The spirits will test your courage, your heart, and your truth. As the crowd dispersed, Oba found himself alone with his best friend, Ao, who looked pale and uneasy. You ready for this? Ao asked, eyes darting nervously. Oba nodded. I have to be. Ao exhaled sharply. Because if not, they won't stop. Not until the whole village feels their anger. That night, under a sky thick with stars, Oba returned to the forest. The wind whispered secrets through the leaves, and shadows danced between the trees. He carried his wooden flute, his only comfort, and stepped into the shrine once more. The drum sat silently, but Oba felt its power thrumming beneath his fingertips. Suddenly, the air thickened. A mist rose from the ground, curling around his ankles like cold fingers. From the haze, figures emerged, ghostly warriors cloaked in battle cloth stained with the dust of centuries. Their faces were painted with ash and ochre, eyes glowing with otherworldly light. They moved silently, but their presence filled the space with a weight that made Oba's breath catch. One stepped forward, a tall figure with a spear tipped in shimmering bone. You called us, Oba, the spirit said, voice like wind through dry leaves. Why have you disturbed our rest? Oba's voice trembled. I didn't mean to. I want to understand. To make things right. The spirit's eyes softened for a moment. Then you must walk with us through the past. Before Oba could respond, the mist thickened, and he was pulled into a vision, a memory not his own. He saw a village like Endamu, but long ago. Warriors gathered around the drum, faces fierce and proud. But betrayal followed, trusted leaders turning away, leaving their people to die in silence. The spirits were condemned to wander, their stories erased. Oba gasped awake, back in the shrine. The warriors were gone, but their words lingered. He was now bound to their fate. Back in Endamu, Mama Ikiri awaited his return with a knowing smile. "You have seen the truth," she said. "Now begins your journey." Oba clenched his fists. "I won't fail them." The drum, silent once more, seemed to pulse with quiet approval. The wind that night carried voices, soft, urgent whispers that threaded through the trees and slipped into the ears of every sleeping villager in Endamu. Oba lay awake beneath his rough-woven blanket, his mind swirling with the memory of the spirit's story. He had been pulled into the past, a time of betrayal and broken promises. The faces of the forgotten warriors haunted him, their glowing eyes pleading for justice and peace. He knew what he had to do. But he also knew it wouldn't be easy. Outside, the village was restless. Children woke crying, dogs howled in the distance, and fires flickered as if touched by unseen hands. At dawn, Oba found Mama Ikiri seated beneath the great baobab tree, the heart of Endamu. She was weaving a crown of woven grasses and feathers, her fingers moving with ancient grace. "Why did the spirits choose me?" Oba asked, sitting beside her. Mama Ikiri looked up, her eyes deep wells of wisdom. "Because your blood ties you to the past. Your ancestors were guardians of the drum's power. It is your burden, and your gift." Oba traced the faint scar over his eyebrow, a mark from his childhood. "Will I be able to send them back?" To quiet the drum, she smiled softly. "The drum is never quiet, Oba. It listens, remembers, and waits. But you can guide the spirits, help them find peace." That day, the village buzzed with rumors. Some spoke of strange shadows moving near the river, others of cold spots where even the sun seemed afraid to shine. Elder Juma was growing more restless, pacing with his cane, his skepticism cracking under the weight of events. Oba found himself alone at the edge of the forest with Ao. "I don't like this," Ao muttered. "The stories we laughed at are coming true." Oba nodded. "We need to find the truth behind the betrayal. Only then can the spirits rest." Ao swallowed hard. "And if we fail?" Oba's eyes met his. "Then the drum will call louder. And the dead will not just whisper, they will rise." That night, Oba was visited again. The mist returned, swirling through the cracks of his hut. From the haze stepped a figure, a young warrior with a fierce, hunted gaze and a wound across his chest. "I am Kato," the spirit said, voice low but steady. "I was betrayed and left to die. Help me be heard." Oba nodded. "Tell me what happened." Through the night, Kato's story unfolded, a tale of greed, lies, and broken trust that had doomed the warriors to wander. Oba knew his journey was just beginning. As the first light of dawn crept over Endamu, Oba made a silent vow. He would face the past, confront the shadows, and answer the drum's call. No matter the cost. The sun barely pierced the thick canopy of the forest of Waja, its rays scattering in golden shards through the towering trees. Oba moved carefully, the earth soft beneath his feet and the air heavy with dampness and secrets. Beside him, Ao gripped a small lantern, its flickering light casting long shadows on the twisted roots that snaked across the path like ancient serpents. "Do you really think we'll find answers here?" Ao whispered, his voice tight with worry. Oba's jaw was set. "We have to. The spirits won't rest until the truth is known. And that means uncovering what the elders hid." They reached a clearing where the remains of an old stone altar lay half buried in moss and vines. The air was thick with the scent of earth and decay. Oba knelt, brushing away years of dirt to reveal faded symbols carved into the stones, spirals and hands, just like on the drum. "Look," Oba said, tracing the lines. "This matches the markings on the drum." Ao shivered. "What does it mean?" Before Oba could answer, a rustle came from the bushes. They spun around. A figure emerged, a young woman with sharp eyes and a calm demeanor. Her dark skin was marked with white tribal paint, and she wore a flowing blue dress embroidered with silver thread. Around her neck hung a necklace of tiny bells that jingled softly as she moved. "I am Lela," she said quietly. "I know why you have come." Oba's heart quickened. "You do." Lela nodded. "The elders sealed away more than just the drum. They buried the truth of what happened here long ago." If you want to bring peace, you must find the lost scrolls hidden beneath the old temple ruins. Oba looked toward the dense forest beyond the clearing. Where are these ruins? Deep inside the forest, Lela replied. But be warned, many have entered and never returned. The three of them moved deeper into the forest, the silence broken only by the occasional call of distant birds and the crunch of leaves beneath their feet. Hours later, they reached the temple ruins. Broken columns leaned precariously, and vines strangled the crumbling walls. The air was thick with mystery and the weight of forgotten history. Oba stepped inside, the floor covered in broken pottery and faded murals that told stories of warriors, betrayal, and sorrow. Lela knelt by a stone altar and began to chant softly, her voice weaving through the air like a prayer. Suddenly, a section of the floor shifted, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling downward into darkness. Oba took a deep breath and led the way. The air grew cooler as they descended, thick with dust and the scent of ancient wood. At the bottom, they found a small chamber filled with scrolls sealed in clay pots. Oba carefully unwrapped one. The faded writing told a story of treachery. A trusted leader had sold his people to rival tribes for power, condemning the warriors to death and dishonor. This is the truth, Oba whispered. Lela nodded. Now the spirits can be freed. Suddenly, the ground shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. They heard footsteps, heavy and angry, echoing down the stairs. Elder Juma's voice boomed, "Stop. You don't understand what you're doing." Oba stood tall. The village deserves to know. Juma's eyes were wild. Knowing will bring ruin. The spirits cannot be controlled. Lela stepped forward. They won't be controlled. They want justice. Juma hesitated, then turned and disappeared up the stairs. The chamber grew still. Oba clutched the scroll tightly. The drum's distant beat began again, slow, steady, calling. The air in the temple chamber was thick with tension. Dust settled slowly as Oba, Lela, and Ao stood silently, their eyes fixed on the cracked scroll in Oba's hands. The distant drumbeat grew louder, more urgent, echoing through the forest and into the village beyond. "We have what we came for," Oba said, voice steady but heavy with resolve. "Now we must bring this truth to Endamu." Lela nodded. "The spirits will only rest once justice is spoken aloud." Ao swallowed hard, glancing nervously toward the narrow stairwell. "And what if Elder Juma tries to stop us?" Oba's jaw tightened. "Then we stand firm. This village needs to face its past, no matter the cost." Back in the village, whispers had turned into murmurs of fear and unrest. The drums of Endamu's own festival had fallen silent, replaced by a haunting echo that seemed to ripple through every hut and street. Oba and Lela moved quickly through the marketplace, the scroll wrapped in cloth and tucked beneath Lela's blue dress. People stared, some with curiosity, others with suspicion. Elder Juma was already waiting in the village square, flanked by a group of elders and armed men. His eyes burned with anger and fear. "You dare bring these lies here?" Juma's voice thundered. "You seek to destroy the peace we have built." Oba stepped forward, heart pounding. "The peace is a lie. Our ancestors were betrayed, forgotten, and their spirits are restless. We owe them the truth." Juma laughed bitterly. "The past is dead. Leave it there, or you risk everything." Suddenly, the ground trembled. The ancient drum in the square began to beat, slow, heavy, and powerful. The villagers froze as a cold wind swept through, carrying with it the voices of the restless spirits. From the shadows, ghostly figures appeared, warriors in ancient armor, their faces both fierce and sorrowful. The crowd gasped and stepped back. Oba raised his hands, calling out, "Listen to their story. Honor their sacrifice." Lela's voice rang clear, chanting the prayers of the ancestors. The spirits swirled around the drum, their voices weaving into a song of pain and hope. Elder Juma fell to his knees, tears streaming down his weathered face. "I was wrong," he whispered. "I buried the truth out of fear. Forgive me." Oba nodded. "It is time to heal." The spirits slowly faded, their anger replaced by peace. The drum's beat softened, becoming a gentle heartbeat in the night. That evening, beneath a sky full of stars, Endamu gathered for a new ceremony, one to honor the forgotten warriors and to promise that their stories would never again be lost. Oba stood beside Lela and Ao, feeling the weight of the past lift from his shoulders. The drum echoed, steady and true, calling not the dead, but the living to remember.
This is the end of the story. Every story holds a seed of wisdom, and with each story, we grow a little deeper into the roots of our culture. If today's tale sparked a thought or touched your spirit, don't just keep it to yourself, share it. Let the story travel. Hit that subscribe button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and let me know which lesson stood out to you. I'm Big Mark, keeping the fire of storytelling burning bright. Until the next tale, stay wise, stay proud, and keep listening.